Another area of problem with virtually all books on ancient history is the evolutionary dogma that requires all of history to move from the simple to the complex. The most obvious answer to that are the Great Pyramids in Giza. We don't know how they were built, we don't know why they were built, and we don't know the technology that was used to build them even today. It would be phenomenally expensive, perhaps bankrupting a country to try to duplicate their effort. And yet, there they stand. Something was different, something that we don't know or understand today. The Bronze Age was not simpler and less complex than the Iron Age. People understood and knew about iron during the Age of Bronze, yet they chose to use bronze. It was a lighter metal, and there are bronze instruments today that are as sharp and can hold an edge just as well as steel. One of the great restrictions that modern people want to place on ancient men is that their technology restricted them from being able to travel. Noah built a great boat that people today don't believe in because they said he didn't have the technology to build it. Therefore, if this boat exists, people could have traveled from any time period anywhere else on Earth. Undoubtedly the most well-known, maybe even the most famous throughout all the earth, but the most well-known within biblical circles, is the Law Code of Hammurabi. When the Law Code of Hammurabi was first discovered, it was dated to be around 1150 BC. Now, evolutionists had a problem with that because that makes it younger than the Law Code of Moses. So they had to do something to place it much older than that. So when the King's List of Nabonidus was discovered, they said, oh, there's a man named Hammurabi here. He must be the Hammurabi who made this law code. And they placed the date around 22 to 2400 BC, making it well before Moses. Well, many problems have been discovered with Nabonidus' King's List. Therefore, that's been moved, and now they're calling it a young date of 1700 or so, 1750. That's still acceptable to them because it places it well before Moses and means that Moses had to draw on Hammurabi's law code rather than Hammurabi's law code being a copy of the law code of Moses. Another well-known problem that secular humanists with their anti-supernatural bias have is the Canaanite culture. What they claim is that the culture that they see, well, it's full of pagan idols, which according to the Old Testament was a problem with the children of Israel, was a very advanced culture, and the children of Israel had a lower culture and they just moved into these houses. There's nothing about the children of Israel having some sort of an advanced culture. Remember, Abraham had a very advanced culture when he moved out of Ur the Chaldees. And then when he moved down into Egypt, the culture clash between Joseph and his brethren with the Egyptian culture was tremendous. And the entire time the children of Israel were down in Egypt, they were isolated from the Egyptians because their culture was so different. And not different in the sense of being, as secular humanists are trying to say, third-rate, pagan, degraded, bunch of stupid hick farmers. The final example of the anti-supernatural bias is this belief that the Egyptian culture was superior to the Israelite culture, and therefore the Israelite culture was built upon the Egyptian culture, rather than what is actually the case the other way around. Thutmose III is the zenith of the Egyptian culture, yet he shows on the walls of his temple in Karnak, Egypt, the sacking of the temple. It means that the temple was built prior to Thutmose III. At least Thutmose III as a child, saw the temple in Jerusalem. I'm unaware of anyone who really loves to study dates. But dates and chronology are the backbone of history. Exodus occurred in 1446 BC. It is the foundation for all other dating throughout the Old Testament. Now we know this because 1 Kings 6:1 says 480 years after the children of Israel had left Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign, in the 2nd month, the month of Ziv, they began building the temple. Solomon's temple establishes a very clear date for us. A very quick overview: after the children of Israel left Egypt, they went to Mount Sinai, then Kadesh Barnea. They were condemned to wander for 40 years. They entered the land, and the time period of the judges was around 350 to 400 years. Then we see the last judge and the founder of the school of the prophets, Samuel. The campaigns that Joshua led did not take place overnight. In fact, some people think that they might have been as long as 20 years. Most conservatives think that they took about 5. After the campaign was finished, Eleazar was the high priest. Now, Eleazar probably was already alive at Kadesh Barnea, but was under 20 years old. Therefore, he was allowed to enter the land. Phinehas, his son, Aaron's grandson, was born during the wilderness wanderings. Phinehas was the high priest, according to the book of Judges, during the horrible incidents in Judges 17. This is the near extinction of the tribe of Benjamin, but it also gives us a time frame. I know most people don't like studying dates. A time frame for the book of Judges. Those events happened not right at the beginning, but near the beginning. The people who participated in the conquest of Canaan as young men were now the elders. And the people who were rebelling against the Lord were people who had never seen the conquest of Canaan. The next to the last judge, major judge before Samuel, mentioned in the book of Judges is Jephthah. He mentions that Israel had already occupied Heshbon, Aroer, A-R-O-E-R, and the surrounding settlements all along the towns of the Arnon River, which is a river that flows in what we today think of as the country of Jordan. It flows from the east to the west. That the children of Israel had occupied these towns for 300 years already. Samuel was the last of the judges, but he was also the first of the prophets. He anointed Saul and began the united monarchy. Samuel's children had displeased both the children of Israel and the Lord by their sin. So God chose Saul, but Saul turned away from the Lord. Now, the Amalekites that Saul defeated lived in a city. They were not, as all secular historians teach, a group of little Bedouins. Remember Balaam's prophecy where he said they were the first among the nations? First among the nations isn't a group of Bedouins. So when Saul defeated them, he propelled Israel to the status of a great world power. David took them further, and Solomon, in all of his splendor, made Israel the greatest nation on earth.